And my role today is just to give you a very brief introduction about what the center does, and then I'll turn it over to Don Robisky, who will give you the results of the study. Next slide, please. This is our vision. We are a nonprofit organization. We're an affiliate of the Greater Houston Partnership. We're about 10 years old, and our vision is to advance the Houston region as one of the top 10 global communities in which to live and work. Next slide, please. One of the signature programs of the center is to widen the circle and deepen the bench of leadership. We really work to expand the diversity of our region's leaders. We have graduated more than 550 from our leadership forums. And we give business leaders an opportunity to learn about the critical challenges facing our region. Everything from education, the development of human capital, environmental issues, which we'll focus on today, and then economic issues and inclusiveness. Next slide, please. Another signature project of the Center for Houston's Future is our Scenario Planning Project. This is our third project, and you're looking at, if you were to wake up on January 1st, 2040, what would this region look like? We hope to have the results of this by early next year. It's been 18 months in going, and this is a type of strategic planning tool that really allows one to look at what the future possibilities are for our region. The quotation here on our slide says, the only relevant question about the future is not whether something will happen, but what would we do if it did happen. And you'll see in our next slide, just to give you an example of the kinds of things that we're looking at. Next slide, please. If you look back at, just for instance, the HISD, student enrollment, and you look back in 1960, you can see the mix of students was 33% African American, 66% white, and at that point, the Hispanic population was included in that 66%. Today, our mix is very different. This is just an example of the kinds of things that we need to look at as we look 30 years out on the region's future. Next slide, please. Another key thing that we do that Mayor Parker participates in that allows our region to talk about the many issues that cross jurisdictional lines is something called Regional 9. Mayor Parker, along with 8 county judges, have the opportunity to visit confidentially without attribution about these kinds of issues to really look at solutions on a regional basis. Finally, one of the things that we do, and again, I'm just giving you a little highlights, we are a partner in a public affairs program called Houston Have Your Say. We've had 6 of these programs. It's an hour-long town hall type meeting where callers can call in. It's a live broadcast. We've looked at issues such as healthcare, public education, regional growth, just a variety of issues, immigration. And we do this in partnership with PBS and the Houston Community Newspapers and Public Radio. And it is, again, a way to educate our community about pressing issues and what we might do about these in the future. Now I'd like to turn this over to Don Robisky, who is our Director of Strategic Initiatives, and she will speak directly to an issue that I know this committee is most concerned about, and that's quality of life, quality of place.
Next slide, please. I wanted to tell you quickly sort of what we looked at in conducting our survey and conducting our study. You'll need to click several times for this slide to work. We brought in people from across 8 counties. We worked with the City of Houston, obviously, Park, HJC, and a number of public agencies to conduct the study. Next slide, please. And we need to click it a few times. Just a little bit about our air. Things we looked at were ozone. Next slide. Particulate matter next. Benzene and butadiene. The last two are carcinogens, as you probably know, and are particularly troublesome for our part of the country. The community goals we don't really have on air quality. Those are dictated by EPA, but these are the standards to which we are held accountable and for which there's some controversy. Next slide, please. Next slide. You'll see that in 1985, this is what our ozone looked like. Next slide. You'll see the big change and what it looked like most recently in 2005. There's a line that will come out when you click the button again to show what the standard is for particulate matter. This is a growing concern in our region, though we're really very close to meeting the standard. It's a growing concern because most of this comes from auto pollution, and as we grow wider and with more cars, more population, which we hope will continue to mean more jobs, this is going to be a real serious issue, and the EPA has just recently lowered the standard, so we're going to have a bigger hill to climb on particulate matter. Next slide. You'll see a line come out now that shows you where the standard is on benzene. If you'll click the button, these are all of the monitoring stations in Harris County, and you see we went out of compliance for a short time, but now we're in really good shape with benzene, it looks like. Next slide, please. A line will also come out. There you go. And we're really in good shape with butadiene. Next slide. The issue about air is not only that we don't want to be known as a city that has terrible air quality, but the real issue is how it affects our human capital, our health of our community, the health of our children. And at the University of Texas School of Public Health, the study found a 56% increased risk of acute lymphocytic leukemia among children living within 2 miles of Houston Ship Channel. A lot of the data we have about these illnesses or potential illnesses are national data. This is local data. So this should be of some concern for us as we look at how we, and I know that council has little other than persuasive power that you can do with this, but the more we're aware of what the real issues, the better off we'll be. Next slide. And I'll let my colleague Sandra Wegman take over for the Parks and Trails portion.
Thank you again for having us. I'm going to hit some of the highlights in terms of the findings of the 2009 report on parks and trails and trees. And I also want to start by inviting this committee to be involved when we do an update again in 2 years. Obviously, many of you have been fighting for this issue for many years, and we welcome your involvement when we do an update. Next slide, please. We looked at, for Parks and Trails, the national standard as our benchmark for Houston. That national standard, many of you know, is 20 acres per 1,000 residents. That's a good, healthy standard for our city to have. We also looked at the percent of the population within a quarter mile of a park, because we know you can walk. If it's not August in Houston, you can probably walk to that park. So how did we do? Well, the good news, relatively speaking, is that the city of Houston is really leading the way for this data set in terms of access acres per 1,000 residents. If you can see this chart, it's a little blurry, but City of Houston averages around 15 acres per 1,000 residents. Harris County slightly lower at about 13 or 14. And City of Sugar Land actually is about 11 or 12. Again, this is a tri-county study. So you can see that we're looking at Fort Bend County and Montgomery County as well. Next slide, please. So the other important baseline measure, of course, access within a quarter mile. Obviously, the Woodlands is doing an outstanding job as a planned community. Again, the City of Houston doing relatively well. 41% of the city's residents live within a quarter mile of the park. But still, obviously, a lot of challenges ahead. So, and another thing, I think both Catherine and Donna talked about the many groups that were a part of this study. Obviously, we worked extensively with the City of Houston, with Joe Turner. We worked extensively with John DeBassinet in Harris County. So we also looked at trees, and specifically at ordinances. If you see in the report, I hope you all have a copy of the report. Page 32 lists ordinances. And this is really an area where we would like your feedback in terms of policy. Our intent is that this document will become more of a policy document in the future, so let us know if we're missing something. How do we measure up in terms of trees? Well, since 1992, the region has lost 680 square miles of trees. And that is, as you know, equivalent to the size of the City of Houston. So that's really astounding. You know, had plenty of people write in and ask, is that right? And it is. Next slide. This is just a visual for you to look at where the tree loss has occurred since 1992. Next slide, please. And going again from 1996 to 2001, you can note in Harris County and Montgomery County major pockets of tree loss. Next slide, please. And then again from 2001 to 2005. This is a satellite tree cover. So why is this important? Well, every year the center puts on an annual symposium. We do it at the Georgia Brown. We hope all of you will attend January 28th of next year when we release the results of this year's study, which is on green buildings, water quality, and water supply. And what we emphasize at the conference is the business argument. Business, quality of life, and health. And I know that you use this argument as well. Next slide, please. So why does this make good financial sense? People will pay more if they live near parks and trails and trees. People will spend more for goods if they're shopping in a tree-lined area. Next slide, please. And this is another statistic. Next slide. So in the report, we document some important statistics. For a property owner or a homeowner, one large live oak tree can net almost $4,000 in benefits to a property owner over 40 years. As well, trees are very important in terms of stormwater quality management. 100 mature trees can intercept 100,000 gallons of rainfall per year in their grounds alone. Social capital, we all know, is important as well. Next slide, please. And finally, trees have a very important role in air quality management. That's fine, you can go ahead. Heat islands as well. Trees can reduce surrounding temperatures by as much as 9 degrees Fahrenheit. Next slide, please. And then finally, this year we decided to look at health, very specifically in our report. There's a chapter dedicated to the health implications of parks and trails and trees, and as well to the health of our air and how that impacts the health of our communities. We encourage you to read that chapter. Obviously, we know that quality of life is a huge dimension. Next slide, please. So specifically trying to put this into numbers, we know that if people live within a quarter mile of a park, they are more likely to exercise and avoid diseases like diabetes. If you look at the year 2000, look at Texas, which is in the yellow, and then look again at the year 2005, we're now in the red, which means our incidence of diabetes has increased in that short amount of time. Next slide, please. And again, you can see this trend for the United States. Next slide, please. So what's the financial cost? Well, obesity alone costs the United States $46 billion per year. Next slide, please. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak, and we encourage all of you to attend the symposium January 28th at the Georgia Brown. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank all of you for presenting. And I just have one request. A copy of the report that you stated with a copy of the ordinance. Can we get a copy of that, please? Absolutely. We have enough. For those who